In a country where over 1.4 billion people live, India faces an environmental crisis like no other. The sprawling cities, rising high, expanding wider, are growing at a breakneck pace. But this rapid urbanization is coming at a dangerous cost. Across the vast landscape, resources are being drained, forests are being cleared, rivers are choking with waste, the air is thick with pollution. But the most terrifying aspect of this all, it's not happening in the distance. It's happening right in front of us. Concrete jungle now consumes the land that once breathed life.
Even today, many people ignore the criticality of climate change.
Our cities are becoming more and more unlivable. And this is a crime that we are doing to the next generations if we don't address this issue.
The modern world is on its path for some kind of self-destruction. And this path of self-destruction is currently being directed by the human beings, not by anybody else. So, it is, has been said many times that we need to change our path. And the word used often is change our lifestyle. But my own analysis for the last 30 years of being in the so-called eco-friendly, designing eco-friendly living or trying to live eco-friendly, one has realized that it's very easy to say we want to change our lifestyle, but it's fundamentally very difficult. It's fundamentally difficult because of certain instincts, intuitions, impulses that we are living with.
All the environmental concerns bothered me. I thought of how knowingly or unknowingly we create so much ill impacts on the environment, and the ways we construct and build our houses are also contributing to the same. I had many questions in my mind. What do you mean by sustainable architecture? Is there a way to build a house sustainably? If there is something sustainable which is beneficial to the environment, society, and the people living in those residences, why have I not seen people around me consider it or use it to build their own residences? Why can we not make ecologically conscious buildings a norm? I embarked on a journey inspired by visionary architect Laurie Baker's philosophies and ideas. As I traversed this path, I met many individuals from pioneering architects, researchers to house owners. You will also have some questions like mine. So come join me to find out answers to these questions. A few decades back, there was a prevailing belief that the technology could shield us from nature's forces. But where are we now?
There was a thinking in the 1930s and 1940s that we need not look at climate. We can artificially create an environment inside which is cooling. But now we know that all these things cost money and it's adding to the global warming.
It is not possible to sustain as a civilization if we don't work with the environment. But does that mean that development is bad?
What is development, right? I mean, is development at the cost of destroying things? Development is certainly necessary because as civilizations grow, it is necessary to do that. But is it at the cost of destroying your own, earth?
There must be some, what you call, I won't use the word rational, I use the word objective. The objectivity must be very defined. That is where the sustainability factor comes. Sustainable is not preserving something. Can you sustain growth? Can I continue the growth factor of human civilization to higher and higher levels? But one thing is, it must respect art at every level of its movement. Unfortunately, technology moves so fast that art is left behind.
What are we doing? It is necessary to understand the problem, to take action and do something about it. Industrialized and conventional ways of building have a huge impact on the environment, and it is something that we don't understand as much as we should.
Industrialized building materials require a lot of energy in their production, which contributes to carbon dioxide, which contributes to global warming, right? So building materials and construction alone contributes to 40% of the total emissions that we are dealing with today. And it's very evident that climate change is happening, and worry about breaching the 1.5 degrees Celsius is already, overcome by the fact that we are already breached it. So we are now next is targeting 2 degrees Celsius. But what we've also found is that industrialized building materials or industrialized buildings require active energy, fans, air conditioning, to keep the indoors comfortable, which additionally puts a pressure on the energy resources that we are drawing from, even if it is renewables. Today, with India being number 3, not only in terms of global emissions, in terms of number 3 in terms of in the country with the maximum emissions, it is also number 3 in instances of cancer, which means that increasingly India is living in an environment which is toxic. The reasons can be many: exposure to microplastics, exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, like all the synthetics that are used in our households, starting from synthetic flooring. All of these are resulting in an environment which is toxic, and the indicator of that is cancer.
How did we get here? How did architecture become so unsustainable today?
Why is architecture unsustainable today? That's a very deep question. We need to go beyond buildings. The problem of unsustainable buildings does not lie with the buildings. Of course, it lies with us. And even when we say it is lying with us, where and how is the question. Then maybe we have to go into human nature. Maybe we have to go into the human mind. I have said this in the past. As long as we are chasing name and fame, as long as we are chasing powers and assets, as long as we are chasing image and importance, it's very, very difficult to change our lifestyle. Now everybody is saying we should need to change our lifestyle. But how many of us have done? Not very many. Few have, of course, achieved this. So architecture is, end of the day, nothing else but the projection of the person. If the person is not keen on ecological building, the architecture will not be an ecological building. If a building is a projection of a person, so if you have to understand what is, sustainability, we have to start with the person. We have to start with the self. Today, most discussions on sustainability starts with sustainability as a subject. Research, data, innovation, seminars, conferences, policies, projects, goes on. How often a discussion on sustainability starts with the self? Very rarely.
Once hailed as a symbol of progress, concrete has become a hallmark of unsustainable construction. There is growing recognition of its long-term damage to both our planet and our living spaces.
See, many of the modern buildings built with concrete, people think that they are durable, but they are not durable. Many of the concrete buildings are being pulled down now because of the leakage issues. Very thermally uncomfortable. I will not blame concrete for it. I will blame the way the concrete is being used. It might not be suitable for all circumstances, all context, and all situations.
How did we start building like this when we used to build sustainably in the past?
What happened when cities emerged in India? Most of India was lived in villages, and they were culturally rooted. They were beautifully, they had their own building technology that worked for them. They knew how to build the private spaces, and they knew how to do the public buildings. When the cities happened, which is an outsider influence to India, or let's say the traditional Indian cities like Kashi and other things did exist, but the industrialization and colonization pushed India and to the cities, there was a lot of chaos. People didn't know what to look for, how to make their shelters in this new space. In those days, what was more popular was people knew how to build hotels in the cities, and so they were trained carpenters who would do these kind of hotel structures, who went on to become the skilled workmen for building the homes. And the same techniques that was followed in like a hotel construction or like a putting up a small office space in the city went on to become the trend for building the home. So even today, if you see, I don't know the reason why false ceilings are used in a home scenario.
We all hear the word sustainable or sustainability around us. We are bombarded with it in our daily life. But do we know what it means? Unless we do, we will fall prey to the people using it as a greenwashing concept.
Sustainability is not just one, you can't look at it in a very narrow-minded way. It is the overall impact a building makes on something is what is more important. So, and the present day style of living and things have undergone drastic changes. We need more natural light, and people read in all the rooms, including the bedrooms. In the olden days, the bedrooms were very dark. The social and cultural changes which have been happening in the society has been very rapid, and drastic changes are there. So we have to, when you design according to the present day circumstances, you try to make the minimal impact on the environment. You have to look into the long-term interests. So you have to make decisions accordingly. And these definitions have been undergoing changes over the years. The thing is climate change and global warming are happening. It is a human-driven emergency, man-created problem. So it is for us to correct these things. Unfortunately, people are not aware of these things. As you said, it is greenwashing which is happening, and people are misled. Many of the products use this as a marketing technique, but the situation has become very grave.
Now, on an individual level, how does one understand sustainability?
Personally, sustainability is about making informed choices about the trade-offs involved in each step of your life. So when I mentioned informed choices, that means you should know the pros and cons of each practice in your life, and that is where information is important. That's when you will know the pros and cons for yourself and for the larger society. And increasingly, we are informed that the distance between your life and the societal life is shrinking. Whether it is the larger phenomena like climate change or, the local experience of floods and landslides, etc. The impact on yourself and the larger society, that is becoming very close. If you are a sustainability enthusiast or concerned about the way humanity is undermining its own future, then you will look at all the forward and backward linkages of whatever you buy, use and consume. And in that sense, for such people, it will make a lot of difference to understand that we have used the least of cement or fossil fuel based energy and such stuff. But otherwise, what makes it important is also to evolve a community around it, wherein the change towards sustainability can happen at a scale. Otherwise, it just becomes an individual endeavor. So to build such a community, this offers a space or a substrate around which you can evolve all the mechanisms that can contribute to a sustainable society. And all said and done, whether you make an informed choice amidst all the trade-offs that you know of, it is going to be a work in progress all the time. But it is important to go there, just like any other normative in the society: justice, democracy, truth, empathy, and sustainability is such a thing. I mean, it will be an asymptotic task. You will always be, as a society, moving towards it. It may not be possible to keep it in your hand and show that now we are here sustainable, but still it is very important, just like other things that we work for as a society.
Certainly, our understanding of sustainability has improved from earlier. Now, to build on top of this understanding, let's see how we can look at sustainability from the building perspective. For that, there are 4 types of sustainability we need to look at. The first, environmental sustainability.
Environmental sustainability means the construction materials used and technologies used must be environmentally sustainable, environment friendly, and that should not create any environmental damage, ecological damage.
Second being technological sustainability.
Technological sustainability means the technology used must be adaptable to the people. They must be capable of using it. They must understand it. People must be capable of using that technology by their own. All these aspects together means technological sustainability.
Third, financial sustainability.
Then financial sustainability means house construction should not be a burden, financial burden to the builder, not the builder, the building consumer. Most probably what is happening is they construct houses beyond their means. Then later on that will become a financial burden. And that means the technology, methods and materials must be affordable to the people and should be within their means. Otherwise, that will create financial problems to the housing consumer.
And finally, fourth, social and cultural sustainability.
Social and cultural sustainability is also very, very important. People living in different cultural and social background require or they need a housing suitable to their living condition, their cultural condition and immediate local environment. For example, the fishing community, they are living near the sea and their occupation is related to sea and coastal environment. Their houses must be, or while planning houses for these people, we must consider their occupation and their income sources. And this is important for the highland people also. So there is no point in proposing a uniform design or architectural proposition for all people living in different regions or different environments.
So in one of our studies, we have looked at vernacular architecture a little more closely in comparison with the conventional architecture, looking at specific case studies of dwellings in 3 rural settlements belonging to 3 different climate zones of the country. So we closely looked at around 9 buildings, 9 dwellings, 9 residences located at 3 different villages. One is Dasenahalli, which belongs to the temperate climate zone. Second is Sugenahalli, which belongs to warm humid climate zone. Third is Bisoy, which belongs to the cold climate zone of the country. We could clearly see that both the transitioning ones and the conventional ones are having more uncomfortable days than the vernacular residences.
Vernacular dwellings actually perform way better in terms of maintaining indoor thermal comfort more than conventional dwellings. And conventional dwellings were increasingly getting warmer, which meant more energy. And more energy again means more carbon emissions. And even if we go with renewables, more energy means more land is occupied somewhere else to put photovoltaics. or again land is occupied somewhere else to put wind farms. That is also going to go unsustainable, because there's a colleague who has done a study on how wind farms actually impacts ecology of the terrestrial reptiles, and that was published in Nature Ecology.
Resource scarcity is already a pressing issue, and modern conventional buildings consume significantly more materials than vernacular structures. With a growing population, demands will continue to rise, and relying on the same construction methods will neither be good for the environment nor will we be able to meet the housing demands.
More than 60 million families in India without a house. Quite a bulk of it is urban population living in slums, but even we have shortage in rural areas as well. So if you look at their houses, we don't have enough cement or steel or concrete to build these houses. So I think the only solution will be bio-waste for these things. Which could be, and we know that there are Palpanavaram Palace, the oldest building, Thai Kottaram, is bulk of the material used is timber. It has stood for 500 years.
Today, yes, it is true that 65% of India and China's population is rural. That will translate to about 1.8 billion people, right? Second, compared to vernacular dwellings in terms of the energy that they require to maintain comfort, and the resources and the energy required to construct them. Modern buildings, the ultra modern buildings, take almost 40 times the resources required, the operational energy, and almost 4 times the energy required in building materials. So if we were to multiply these numbers by 1.8 billion, we can clearly see the numbers don't match up. We don't have the resources. Second, our research has shown that vernacular buildings, which are typically considered as undeveloped or primitive, perform much better in every aspect, in climatic response, indoor air quality, end of life toxicity, and also the multiple scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions that people talk about in life cycle analysis. They fare much better in all of these compared to modern dwellings. So what we need to do is that if 60% of India's population is rural, and a large share of these living in vernacular dwellings, we should leverage them, scientifically validate them, and re-enrich values in the inhabitants to continue occupying them, because they provide natural resilience to withstand climate change as it is unfolding.
Many of us often fail to understand the far-reaching impact of manufactured materials, making it essential to explore the debate between natural and manufactured materials.
There has been this debate, we are pitting one against the other, natural materials versus manufactured materials. But manufactured material just doesn't happen in the air. So it also is dependent on the natural material. Cement comes from the limestone. If cement comes from the limestone, why can't we build with lime? And why build with cement? So it is the processing and the producing of the manufactured material which consumes a lot of the earth energies, be it electricity, be it water, be it air incidentally, be it whatever it is. And hence in the act of manufacturing, there is also an act of creating wastage. However, there are people who say that when you are manufacturing, we can manufacture in larger quantities that we need, whereas when you are using natural materials, we don't get in the same quantity, which again cannot be true fully. Some people have said if you take the mud from the earth, from the soil, then it's also a problem. Of course it is. But the total soil that we can take from our land, we are not referring to the fertile soil, not the topsoil fertile soil, the soil which is below that, much below that. We can get much more soil than what the cement factories can produce cement.
Indeed, the materials should be natural, but one also needs to look how and from where they are sourced from. Just using natural material isn't enough, and one should also ensure these materials are not a result of exploitative practices.
For example, there were a lot of stone buildings which are very traditionally built. But now if you look at how the quarries are being, the source of the granite in Kerala is from granite quarries. At some time it was cheaper, but now when you look at the social cost and the social benefit and the reasons that landslides are caused by the quarries, it might be time to relook at the vernacular architecture, some of the materials. Laterite could be another. My father built a house 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago, with laterite. And the laterite was sourced from my house compound. But when laterite is sourced from a quarry, the land is degraded. So there is a problem. So you should not take a romantic view of the vernacular architecture. You have to look from case to case. And so similar, timber is considered to be the most sustainable building material. But if the source of the timber is by cutting forests, this is something to be questioned. So we have to look at all these things.
Like many others, I also had doubts about the maintenance of houses constructed with alternative building techniques. It is true that maintenance of these buildings differ, but our minds have been conditioned to accept the existing norm, and breaking away from it will need active effort.
The major challenge is to face the maintenance skills for such a space. Over time, it emerges in the community as a collective learning how to manage your compost, kitchen, leaf, garden very differently and collectively. And then also STP, rainwater, solar power, everything. And these things cannot be predetermined to a larger extent because technologies differ and costs differ. But it emerges in a community of conscious consumers. And the space and architecture facilitates that.
Yes, there are issues of maintenance. There are issues of, say, materials not being so durable. But these are the very reasons why these dwellings are faring much better. And I will tell you why. All houses require maintenance, right? You have, say, services available in urban areas to somebody coming and cleaning your kitchen or removing, the moss from your front yard. And even in vernacular dwellings, the skill that is vanishing, maintenance of these dwellings will provide local skill, local economy. The same is happening for urban dwellings. So it would be incorrect to say that modern dwellings require less maintenance. The nature of maintenance is where it differs. Otherwise, localized economies can actually spill around or can evolve around vernacular dwellings where the local skill is maintained and preserved.
Is this too hard to maintain? So which is like, no, this isn't too hard to maintain. It is all done, and probably instead of a coat of paint, all that it needs is a wash. So it is not hard on maintenance.
Buildings are more than just spaces we use today, and it needs to be looked from that perspective. It is important to design in a way that makes them useful for years to come so that they don't need to be torn down anytime soon.
So one of the most important things which a lot of people don't even think about is the longevity of what you build and space, and also the relevance of that, of the buildings or spaces that you create. Which would be the place that you would say today, you would like to visit? It wouldn't be the new buildings and the new shopping malls and things like that. I mean, as tourists, I'm saying. So you would be going to the older parts of the city. Let it be in India, in any part. Forget the monuments. I'm talking about any part of the city. Like I'm from Cochin and I've grown up in Cochin, right? Today, if you ask me, the most beautiful part of Cochin is the older parts of Fort Cochin, and such areas are still the most beautiful part because it has immense amount of. It's very beautiful, and from a point of space that you can walk around, space that you can spend time with and all that, which is the same why tourists go to these places. Now it's also because these places are still relevant. They age gracefully. They are still relevant. They are not being torn down. And if you look at many of these buildings which are short today, when you build them just like that quickly without any thought, they don't have a shelf life more than few years, right? They start aging quickly. They start rapidly deteriorating. They also become non-relevant. So then that makes way for demolishing it and rebuilding it. Now what does it add to? It adds to the huge amount of debris that we create, huge amount of wastage of resources, huge amount of, all sorts of resources. And
India has diverse vernacular architectural styles which evolved over a long period of time. One can notice how these styles are adaptive to the local climatic and social conditions.
For example, in a humid climate, it is not the temperature gives the comfort. It is the wind movement which gives the comfort. You might stand in the beach or by the side of a lake in peak summer and the temperature will be 35 degrees. But if the wind is blowing, you feel very comfortable. And this is one of the principles by which many of our traditional buildings have been built. They have a courtyard which allows for good cross ventilation. Behind a door, you should put a window. Behind a window, you should put another door. So all these things which are there in our traditional architecture helps. And so the sloping roof, for example, which is very suitable for the climate, many of the tropical areas. So there are many of these lessons which we can learn from our vernacular architecture. The cross ventilation is very important. And our ancestors knew about it. They always used to talk about it. It's a knowledge system. Don't follow it as a style. I mean, it's not that you put two timber columns in the front and call it traditional architecture or vernacular architecture. Try to understand the way the ancestors built these houses, which are durable, which are thermally comfortable, and apply 21st century know-how.
For this form of architecture to flourish, the education and information of these alternative techniques is important. Along with it, implementation of policies that ensure affordability and promote its development are also necessary.
I think information, education, etc. are key for all such choices of individual, private, social trade-off wherever it exists. But then affordability is a major thing in India because most of our housing needs are for the middle or income poor class, and convincing them just because of the social benefits out of it is not possible. And so there could be explicit public incentives for that segment of people who need housing.
Government or public agencies must incentivize people and institutions to construct or to use these alternative technologies by providing concessions, by making these materials available, by training people, by demonstrating, by building, by constructing buildings for demonstration. Governments, especially local governments, can do a lot of things for popularizing these type of alternative technologies. Number two, they can discourage wasteful use of energy intensive materials by imposing prohibitively high taxes, and people should not be allowed to construct big houses beyond their means and needs. This must be implemented. Not we must have a guideline at the top level, and implementation should be at the local self-government level.
Some of us might have at least considered building an alternative and ecologically conscious residence. In my journey, I met a few who chose to build in this manner, and I tried to understand their motivations and considerations behind it.
I myself, because of my understanding of the issues, because of my social concern, and because of my affordability concerns, I decided to use this alternative method and technologies. It is my personal decision, and nobody insisted me, nobody compelled me to use this, and there was no social pressure also.
We overbuild in India and we try to compete with our neighbors and we want to build the house better than our neighbors. I had no such intention. One auntie came and told me, "Arey bete, aapke paas paisa nahi hai for painting. I'll give you the money for painting." Little realizing that no, I don't want it painting. It's not because of lack of funds. For me, anything that's burnt was high energy. Even the glass I use requires a lot of energy. And as energy costs went up, the price even of the glasses went up. So I was only looking at the fact whether the material is burnt or not burnt. Two is I wanted to go as basic as possible, where I don't require to burn wood, heat, bake it in an oven or anything. So terracotta, burnt bricks, wire cut bricks, any other kind of burnt material, I just deleted from my choice. We bought the mud and we made the bricks over here. We made about 600 bricks a day. And the basic choice I said for stabilized mud block was the fact that it was not burnt. Sustainability is all in the head. It's up to you how you live, what you do. You live in a sustainable house, if it's defined as a sustainable house just because it's mud block, but you have a bathtub and then you have a rain shower and then you have something else and you use a lot of water and you consume a lot, that's not sustainable living. The thing I did is I also made the ceilings very high, did a jack arch roof. So I was also very conscious of using less material, keeping it lightweight, keeping a lot of openings, large windows to let in the light so that we don't have to put in the lights. For a few years, we didn't even have fans in the rooms except in the bedrooms. Also kept in mind the direction of the wind and so made more openings opposite each other. I was also not wanting to use granite and things because I've been to granite quarries and I've seen the way hills are cut and the slag is then dumped into the fields or wherever.
While cost and maintenance are the primary points of consideration while making our homes, a key factor that is often overlooked, the health and the interconnectedness it has with the environments we choose to live in.
We found that vernacular dwellings, when we examined it at that point of time, we only looked at indoor temperatures. Later studies, more recent ones, we even looked at indoor moisture content. And what we found is that earth-based materials have this property called moisture buffering, whereby when the air gets very dry, the wall actually releases moisture to the indoors, making it more comfortable for breathing, right? And when it gets very moist, then the wall actually absorbs moisture. So it regulates moisture to a band which is supportive of respiratory comfort. And what I mean by respiratory comfort is that the air that enters the lungs needs to be saturated, right? If you breathe in air which is very dry, then your trachea, the part of the breathing way before they enter the lungs, actually start to get dry because they try to compensate for the moisture being less in the air that you're breathing. And those sort of problems don't happen in those dwellings. So they're inherently more comfortable without the need for any humidifiers, without the need for any air conditioning, right? So they are low energy houses anyway. Earthing is a phenomenon that is increasingly being recognized by the West, whereby a human body needs to be earthed, as in you need to be in contact with the bare earth, and that is also therapeutic to the legs, feet, bottom of the base of your feet. And it is traditional practice in Indian culture that you walk around the house with barefoot, which means that if you have materials which are natural, they naturally earth you. And there are increasing studies which show that if you are naturally earthed, the instances of disease actually reduces and the healing in the body also increases.
I personally believe that there is something for everyone in sustainable architecture and we all can take something from it. How much one can take depends on the individual conditions of the people.
The one core sustainability component that can get included in any of the projects, not only buildings, is to ask what is the minimum thing that we could be doing, which can satisfy our requirements. So not going overboard on making it kind of a maximalism approach, or making it like a going on building around it. Like if we can live in a if a 200 square feet is a good enough space for a person to live, then how do you make the most, what tricks do you use to make this 200 square feet more spacious, to look more spacious, or to feel more larger, should be the idea, rather than saying, just chucking off the 200 square feet and saying, let's go with 400 square feet. It is that optimum level that we need to question, that is a fine balance, which is taking care of our requirements and which is having a balance for the environment around us.
If you look at even when you build sustainably, if you do not take care and if you don't design the building well, or you don't choose the materials right, you will have problems, right? The buildings will not sustain over a period of time very well. And these should be thought out well, right? From how you protect a building, from how the walls are protected, right? I mean, they're not directly exposed to rain and sun. They have protection in some form, or for that matter, any aspect of any building. I mean, the kind of, say, the bricks that we use, or any sort of thing which is exposed. So that unless deep thought is given to that, even what we call a sustainable and eco-friendly building can, if it's not thought out well, it can deteriorate. But the fact is that buildings which are already built, I mean, you look at many hundreds or thousands of years ago, before even concrete was even there, those buildings were thought and built well, and many of them last even today. And when we visit most of forget India, I mean other countries as well, most of those are centuries old, right? The most beautiful buildings you look at are centuries old. Now, they've lasted well.
Sustainability, it's not a choice, and it shouldn't be two verticals. Like there shouldn't be any discussion like conventional and sustainable. It should be one, and every structure should be sustainable. It can be sustainable.
So over the decade, there has been larger acceptance of these ideas by people. Engineers accepted it, owners accepted it, architects promoted it. So it happened. So popularizing the alternate eco-friendly architecture is possible if all the players in this industry come together.
Unfortunately, our new generation of architects and engineers don't know about these materials, and they don't advise the public to do these materials. This is where, we have to take some major shift in our thinking process. And now it has become a serious issue. Issue is already there. It is not an issue which is going to come up. It is already happening. I never thought that I'll live to see the climate change and global warming, but I'm seeing it. I know that next few years is going to become, even more dangerous. Unfortunately, our new generation is not being taught about any of these building materials. They are being taught about concrete and steel, which already makes huge impact on the climate change issue, the global warming issue. So, when all these things needs a major shift in our thinking, and the way we want to look at is to see that our buildings are built in a more sustainable manner rather than as a greenwashing technique. What we have to understand is that none of the new techniques or materials is going to solve the problem. It is only going to delay the problem. What is going to happen in 20 years might happen in 30 years. So what we have to look at is how can we reverse the climate change?
Show me two birds in nests. Yet you can identify the bird or the culture of the bird from the nest, and yet the other bird does not build like this nest. Why isn't it happening in the human thing? Because we have learned too much of somebody else's. Can we unlearn that and learn ourselves? To learn oneself is the most difficult thing. Learning is easy, but unlearn what you have learned is the most difficult thing. You eat Monday this, Tuesday this. Can you unlearn and eat something else, something different? That's the most beautiful part. Very difficult.
We are unfortunately, stuck with a very standardized, sort of unfortunately westernized perspective of examining things. Our whole perspective of what is good music or bad music is influenced. What is good material, bad material is influenced by the West. I think we should start believing in ourselves and look around us and see, okay, what is there in me? What is the opportunity that is there in me to reduce my footprint? And then each one has a lot of options to explore innovative ideas and try it out. See, I think the way forward is to explore opportunities to reduce our overall footprint, whether it is energy consumption or material consumption or overall consumerism itself. And wherever we are, there will be the relevant opportunities that come in terms of reducing all of this, right? If we are used to electricity coming from a grid, reduce the consumption per capita. That is the first thing. If we are used to, say, certain consumptions connected with buildings, cement-based, or a lot of material coming from virgin, say, exploitation of quarries or steel or aluminum or whatever, try to reduce that. And third is the consumption that we have for a regular day-to-day basis.
If there is an intention, maybe the aspirations can be changed. So the intention has to come from us architects, engineers, builders, contractors, everybody. So if a potential house owner walks up with an aspiration of a concrete house, if everybody else around that person has an aspiration of sustainable home, eco-friendly house, maybe one can convert that person.
As we stand on the threshold of an uncertain future, one thing is clear. The way we build today will define the world of tomorrow. Sustainable architecture isn't just about constructing buildings. It's about creating legacies that protect our environment, our resources, and our communities. India's growth is inevitable, but it is the choices we make in the spaces we inhabit that will determine whether the growth is a triumphant of progress or a forgotten opportunity. The power to shape our future lies in our own hands, and it starts with the buildings we build.
See, there are certain habits we human being can step into. As you know, humans are habit forming. Wearing a cotton kurta is habit forming. But then, after you wear the cotton kurta, you don't feel like wearing a factory made kind of a modern shirt. So it's the same thing also with eco-friendly architecture. Once we taste that, experience it, perceive it, designing with nature and living with nature, it's very difficult to go back to the conventional manufactured houses. It's very difficult.